The prophetic saying in the Conquest of Constantinople, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, "Verily, you will conquer Constantinople, and what a wonderful commander will be its commander, and what a wonderful army will be that army." Viewers, by the 13th century, the Mongols had nearly destroyed the entire Muslim world. Cities that represented the height of Islamic civilization, from Central Asia to Khorasan and Anatolia, had been trampled under the feet of the Mongols. No one at the time could have imagined that the Muslim civilization, seemingly breathing its last due to Mongol invasions, would soon rise again with renewed strength and establish a magnificent empire that would shine for centuries. At that time, the Seljuk rulers in what is now Turkey were barely holding on to their small state. On the eastern side of Anatolia, a few forts still remained, while the grand city of Constantinople in Europe was still under Byzantine control. In Central Asia and Transoxana, many Mongols had started converting to Islam. Yet despite their conversion, numerous destructive Mongol factions continued to pose significant threats to the Muslim world. These were still a savage people, unfamiliar with civilization or culture. Amid this chaos, a remarkable event occurred, one that not only changed the fate of the Muslim world, but altered the entire course of human history. A small, unknown Turkish tribe, defeated in internal conflicts, fled Central Asia and wandered through Khorasan, Iran, seeking refuge from the terror of the Mongols. Eventually, this tribe entered the territory of the Seljuk Sultan. As they arrived, they witnessed a massive army surrounding a smaller force that was about to be annihilated. Moved by tribal honor and a sense of justice, the Turkish tribe decided to help the smaller force. Thanks to their intervention, the small army not only escaped total destruction, but achieved victory. Some enemy soldiers were killed, others fled. After the battle, the Turkish tribe learned that the army they had helped belonged to the Seljuks and was commanded by none other than Sultan Aladdin himself. The enemy they had fought were Mongol forces. This was Sultan Aladdin's first encounter with the Turkish tribe, grateful for their unexpected aid. He granted them land in his territory, a large province where they could settle. This small tribe, once wandering for safety, now had their own autonomous region and the protection of a powerful sultan. After Sultan Aladdin's death, the entire Seljuk territory came under control of this Turkish tribe. Later, a member of this tribe, Osman Khan, known as Sultan Osman Ghazi, laid the foundation of the Ottoman Empire, an empire that would protect the honor of the Muslim Ummah for the next 600 years. Osman Ghazi's empire later became known as the Ottoman Caliphate. The Turks were naturally a warrior nation, born for battle, bravery, and courage. Undoubtedly, based on these qualities, Allah Almighty, in His infinite wisdom, chose them to rise from darkness and disbelief and be blessed with the light of faith, at a time when the rest of the Muslim world was in decline and desperately needed new, brave blood. It was nothing short of a miracle of history that the same Mongols who had brought destruction upon the Muslim world just 2 generations earlier now became Muslims and emerged as its strongest defenders. Referring to this divine miracle, the great poet Allama Iqbal said, "From the chaos of the Tatars emerged such clarity that the idols of the temple bowed before the Kaaba." Viewers, the rule of the Ottomans, established around 1300 CE, protected the dignity and honor of the Muslim Ummah until 1923. At its peak, the caliphate spanned 3 continents. One end touched China, while the other included Khorasan, Central Asia, Iraq, the Levant, North Africa, and parts of Europe. By the 16th century, even the religious authority of the Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad had been transferred to the Ottomans. From then onward, the Ottoman Caliphate was the spiritual and political leader of the Muslim world. No Muslim ruler or governor across the Islamic world was considered legitimate unless recognized by the caliph. Even today, many parts of the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca and Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina were built under the orders of the Ottoman caliphs. For 600 years, this caliphate stood as a symbol of Muslim pride and strength, until the aftermath of World War I in 1918, when the Western powers began dismantling the Ottoman Empire. This led to a powerful movement in India known as the Khilafat movement. Inspired by this cause, many Muslims traveled to Turkey to support their fellow Muslims. one of Allama Iqbal's most famous poems. Fatima bint Abdullah tells the story of a 12-year-old Arab girl who is martyred while serving water to Turkish mujahideen during the Balkan War. Iqbal writes, Fatima, you are the honor of the lost Ummah. Even the smallest particle of your dust is precious. From the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muslims have been in conflict with the Byzantine Empire, which was centered in Constantinople. The Battle of Tabuk was also against the same Christian forces supported by Byzantium. Even before the Prophet's passing, he had ordered the army of Usama bin Zayd R.A. to march against the Byzantines. During the Caliphate of Abu Bakr R.A., Muslim forces under Khalid ibn al-Walid R.A. entered Syria and captured the region from Byzantine control. Under Ottoman ibn Affan R.A., Muslims built their first naval fleet and launched the first naval war against Constantinople around 34 Hijri. Their fleet, consisting of around 200 ships, successfully defeated the Byzantine navy, which had 700 ships. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan R.A. also sent continuous military campaigns against Constantinople. Many companions of the Prophet participated in these missions, including Abu Ayyub al-Ansari R.A., whose tomb still exists in modern-day Istanbul. Later, during the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz R.A., in 98 Hijri, another naval expedition with 1,800 ships was launched against the city, but due to unfavorable conditions, the siege could not continue. Even during the Abbasid era, several military campaigns targeted the city, but it remained unconquered. The deep emotional connection of Muslims with Constantinople was rooted in the hadith of the Prophet. You will surely conquer Constantinople. What a great commander will be the one who conquers it, and what a great army will that army be. Inspired by this prophecy, Muslim rulers and armies tried for over 900 years to conquer Constantinople. It is said that had the Muslims directed their efforts elsewhere, they could have conquered all of Europe, but their focus remained on fulfilling the Prophet's words. Constantinople was one of the most strategically important cities in the world, located at the crossroads of Asia and Europe. It controlled vital trade routes and for centuries served as the front line between the Muslim and Christian worlds. When the Ottomans finally established their empire in Anatolia, the attacks from the Byzantine Empire via Constantinople ceased. Later, this led to the historic conquest of the city, fulfilling prophetic tradition after centuries of struggle. The blessed hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, stated that by the 14th century, conditions had reached a point, even in the Byzantine Empire, that the Ottomans felt the time was extremely favorable for the conquest of Constantinople. The Turks were a rising power, while the Byzantine Empire was rapidly declining and falling apart. The great Byzantine Empire, which had represented Christianity in the East for 1,000 years, had become so weakened that its provinces in Eastern Europe and the Balkans were breaking away and declaring independence. Regions like Serbia, Bulgaria, and Bosnia had formed small, independent Christian states, often in conflict with each other. At the same time, the Byzantine Church remained in internal conflict. Since the Western European countries were under the authority of the Roman Pope, their focus was not on saving Constantinople, but rather on expelling Muslims from Spain. In such circumstances, nature gave Muslims the opportunity to advance strongly toward their glorious goal. In the late 14th century CE, under the leadership of Ottoman Sultan Murad, Muslims launched an invasion of Albania. During the war against Serbian forces, Sultan Murad was martyred. Consequently, on the battlefield itself, his son Bayezid ascended the throne. Bayezid was such a powerful and honorable ruler that his people gave him the title Yildirim, which means thunderbolt in Turkish. Bayezid Yildirim had a firm determination to conquer Europe and Constantinople. By 1397 CE, Bayezid Yildirim had become so powerful that the Muslims had completely besieged Constantinople. It was very close to being conquered. The Christian king of Constantinople agreed that in the future, only a ruler nominated by Bayezid Yildirim would govern the city. For the Christian world of Europe, this was a deeply humiliating condition. But the Byzantine Empire was so weak that it was ready to accept even such terms in order to prolong its survival. At that critical moment, when Sultan Bayezid Yildirim was on the verge of conquering Europe and Constantinople, a new obstacle emerged by divine will. From Central Asia arose a Mongol ruler who, though a Muslim in name, was devoid of Islamic morals and nobility. The world knows him as Sultan Tamerlane, also called Timur the Lame. Timur wanted to expand his empire from Central Asia. Though he was called a Muslim, his sword brought the greatest harm to the Muslim Ummah itself. In 1398 CE, Timur entered Afghanistan from Transoxana and reached Delhi via the Khyber Pass. He looted Delhi and returned. The following year, he passed through Khorasan, Baghdad, and Damascus, destroying all the Muslim cities in his path before returning to the center in Transoxana. In 1402 CE, when Sultan Bayezid Yildirim was preparing to conquer Constantinople, Timur emerged once again from Central Asia, and this time attacked the Ottoman territories in Anatolia. It is written that the king of Constantinople had invited Timur to attack, to prevent Bayezid from conquering the city. Bayezid was forced to lift his siege from Europe and return to Asia with a small army to confront Timur. Sultan Yildirim had an army of only 100,000 soldiers, while Timur had invaded Ottoman territories with 500,000 troops. Because of Timur's aggression, Europe finally breathed a sigh of relief. In 1402, at the ancient site of Ankara, the two armies clashed. Due to betrayal of the Mongol troops within Bayezid's army, the weakness of the Serbian and French commanders, and Timur's use of elephants against the Ottoman cavalry, Bayezid's army was destroyed. Bayezid's son Mustafa was killed in battle, and Bayezid himself was taken prisoner. Timur treated Sultan Bayezid mercilessly. He was placed in a cage and paraded with Timur's army. After 8 months in captivity, Bayezid died. Some historians argue that Bayezid suffered this fate due to his weaknesses, indulgence, and carelessness. After his capture and death in prison, it was believed that the Ottoman Empire had ended. However, miraculously, after 10 to 12 years of unrest, a Turkish sultan once again ascended the throne and revived the Ottomans. Around 1413, Sultan Mehmed I, the youngest son of Bayezid Yildirim, took the initiative and re-established the Ottoman Empire. Then, in 1451 CE, another member of the Ottoman family ascended the throne, Sultan Mehmed II, later known as Mehmed the Conqueror. At the time of his coronation, Sultan Mehmed was only 23 years old. By then, the Ottoman Empire had regained its strength and glory. The wounds inflicted by Timur had healed, and once again, the empire turned its focus toward Europe, especially the conquest of Constantinople. Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror was obsessed with the idea of conquering Constantinople. He had a deeply spiritual connection with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and aspired to achieve the honor mentioned in the Prophet's hadith regarding the conqueror of Constantinople. It is narrated that one night, Sultan Mehmed dreamed a radiant saintly figure who ordered him to attack Constantinople. It is believed that this saint was none other than Hazrat Abu Ayyub Ansari, may Allah be pleased with him, the host of the Prophet in Medina. Hazrat Abu Ayyub Ansari had joined the early Muslim expeditions against Constantinople during the time of Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, but died outside the city walls and was buried there. When Sultan Mehmed received the spiritual glad tidings, the geographical and political situation between Asia and Europe had become favorable for an attack. The Ottomans had once again gained full control over Asia, and the Europeans had begun abandoning Constantinople for the Balkans and other parts of Eastern Europe. Constantinople, now surrounded on all sides by the Ottomans, was the capital of a declining empire. For the first time in 900 years, Muslims were militarily in a position to launch a full-scale assault on Constantinople. Upon ascending the throne, Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror began preparing for war. From a defensive perspective, Constantinople was considered the strongest fortress in the world. Its walls were so thick that no invading army had managed to conquer the city by force in the past 1,000 years. Even today, if you visit Istanbul, you'll be amazed by the thickness of those walls. The outer wall faced the plains, and a strong inner wall stood near the city. Geographically, the city was protected by the sea on 3 sides and land on 1, making it nearly impregnable. To breach the massive fortress, gaps had to be created in the walls, and enemy supplies via sea had to be cut off. To achieve this, Sultan Mehmed built a massive fortress on the eastern side of Constantinople, near the Bosphorus Strait, to block aid from the Black Sea. This fortress made it impossible for any ship to pass without the Sultan's permission. He also created a naval fleet of several hundred warships to blockade the seas around the city. But the main assault would take place from land. To break through the thick defensive walls, he needed an extraordinary cannon. Gunpowder had already been invented and cannons were in use, but none were large enough to destroy such walls. Sultan Mehmed's name lives on in military history for his unprecedented strategy during the conquest of Constantinople. He decided to build the world's largest cannon and commissioned a Hungarian engineer for this purpose, someone who had initially offered his services to Byzantines, who rejected him. The engineer then came to Sultan Mehmed. The Sultan welcomed him and tasked him with building the largest cannon ever, providing all necessary resources. After great effort, the world's largest cannon was built, and 200 more cannons were made based on its design. Its barrel was 27 feet long, weighed 18 tons, and could fire a 300-kilogram stone ball over a mile. Its bore diameter was 30 inches. It took 100 oxen and 600 men to move it. For comparison, today's largest Pakistani army artillery has a bore of about 8 inches. Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, the Conqueror, held deep reverence and love for the seal of the prophets. The leader of all prophets, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. He was passionately devoted to acting upon the hadith regarding the conquest of Constantinople, to the point of near obsession. Due to the spiritual connection, Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih was blessed with a dream in which he visited Hazrat Abu Ayyub al-Ansari R.A. In the dream, the saint gave him the glad tidings that Constantinople will be conquered by his hands. After this vision, the Sultan's fervor and determination reached new heights, and no obstacle in the world could hold him back. In that state of divine love and obsession, he devised an extraordinary and unprecedented military strategy that has left the world in awe to this day. No commander or naval leader before or after him has ever accomplished such a feat as Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih did at that moment. Undoubtedly, more than strategic brilliance, it was his spiritual strength and passion that drove and performed such a miracle of military history. The Sultan commanded that instead of bringing the ships through the water near the city walls, they be moved overland. The fleet was dragged across land over a distance of several miles to reach the other side of the Golden Horn, Halych Bay. This astonishing order seemed unbelievable and incomprehensible even to his own advisors, but the Sultan's decision was final. Under this plan, the Muslims were to avoid the chain barrier and Christian ships blocking the mouth of the Golden Horn and reach behind enemy lines. To achieve this, the Muslims built a road from the Bosphorus to the Golden Horn, using logs as rollers after cutting down trees from nearby forests. They greased the logs and slid their massive naval ships across land, pulled by the full might of the Muslim army. This operation was so astonishing that even today it defies belief. But historical records confirm that the Muslim navy was moved over land overnight and brought down into the Golden Horn beneath the city's fortifications. When the Byzantines woke the next morning and looked toward the sea, they were horrified to find the Ottoman fleet launching a surprise artillery attack from the rear. The water near the point of landing was shallow, making it easier for the Muslim navy to confront the Byzantines. The Byzantine navy, blocked by the chain at the harbor's mouth, could not reach the Muslims, and their ships remained stuck in place. Now, the Muslim army had access to the fortress walls from both land and sea, and a two-front bombardment began. Panic spread inside the city. The Byzantines moved many of their guards from land to the sea in an attempt to defend the coastline, leaving the outer wall weakened. The Turkish naval forces and commandos now stood ready to storm a fortress. It became nearly impossible for the Byzantine forces to defend both fronts. Breaches began to form in the fortress walls, and the defenses weakened so much that a full assault could now succeed. At this critical juncture, Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih decided it was time for a mass attack. A war council was called. One of the Sultan's own ministers, who had betrayed him and was colluding with the enemy, advised retreat. The Sultan rejected this treacherous advice and later, upon discovering the betrayal, sentenced the traitor to death. Even in those times, traitors existed within Muslim ranks. Meanwhile, the Muslim navy was shelling the walls from the sea. The Sultan ordered the military band to play with full force. After collective prayers and worship, a massive offensive was launched. The Turkish elite units, cavalry, and infantry stormed the city from all sides, shouting Allahu Akbar to the sounds of the Mater military band. The city had two major defensive walls. The inner wall was closer to the city, and the outer one was being bombarded by the Muslim cannons. Due to a shortage of Byzantine troops, most defenses were concentrated on the outer wall. If this fell, the city would have no inner defenses. Half the guard force had already been diverted to stop the naval attack. Fear and mourning gripped the entire city. The people gathered in the Hagia Sophia Cathedral and prayed desperately for divine help, which never came. Some took omens from unusual occurrences, a lunar eclipse, mysterious lights in the sky, and interpreted them as signs that divine blessings had left the city. As the Muslim war drums beat louder, the Emperor Constantine XI walked the streets of the city for one last time before heading to the front lines. The Muslim forces stormed the city with cries of Allahu Akbar and took control. Constantinople, which for 1,000 years had been the heart of the Byzantine Empire and the fortress of Christendom, now lay under Muslim feet. When Richard the Lionheart left for Palestine to fight Sultan Saladin Ayyubi, he stopped in Constantinople and prayed at the Hagia Sophia, which was considered the spiritual center of Christianity. For Muslims, to capture was as significant as if, God forbid, Christians were to take over Mecca or Medina. Finally, Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih's forces broke through. Emperor Constantine XI was last seen fighting in the streets. Whether he was killed in battle, drowned while fleeing, or lived the rest of his life in anonymity is unknown. His fate remains a mystery, and many legends arose among Christians, some claiming he was turned into a marble statue waiting to return and reclaim the city. One legend says that as Muslims entered the Hagia Sophia, a priest was taken by two angels and hidden until the church would be returned to Christians. These myths were clung to by a people unable to accept that the city had fallen. Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih had already sent elite soldiers into the city with strict orders to prevent looting. While some instances of disorder occurred in the chaos of battle, order was quickly restored. He granted safety to the people of the city. When the Sultan entered the Hagia Sophia triumphantly, he performed a prostration of gratitude, recited the Hadith of the Conquest, and then changed the city's name to Islambol, meaning City of Islam, which later became Istanbul. He ordered the first call to prayer to be made from the Hagia Sophia. For the first time in history, the Adhan call to prayer echoed in the center of the Byzantine Empire. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque and remained so for the next 6 centuries. Its walls were painted over covered with religious imagery. A pulpit was installed, and it served as a mosque throughout Ottoman rule. Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih prayed, "O Lord, preserve this place as a mosque forever. May the curse of Allah be upon anyone who tries to turn it back into a church." In 1923, when the Ottoman Caliphate ended, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk converted Hagia Sophia into a museum. The Islamic decorations were gradually removed, and the ancient Christian images were uncovered again. Years later, under the leadership of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Hagia Sophia was reconverted into a mosque, and once again the words Allahu Akbar echoed in its halls.